I never imagined that my life would turn out this way. At 40 years old, I had everything I ever wanted: a thriving technology consulting firm in Charleston, South Carolina, a beautiful wife, Megan, who was a successful professional photographer, and two wonderful kids, Emily and Joshua. Megan and I had been married for 9 years, and for the most part, our life together had been filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. But recently, something fell off. Megan and I had always been a strong team. She had her photography business, which kept her busy traveling around the country, and I had my consulting firm, which required my full attention. But through it all, we managed to support each other and make time for the things that mattered. We had a routine, weekend getaways when we could, dinners together, family movie nights. I had always believed that our bond was unbreakable, that the love we shared was strong enough to weather any storm. But I begun to notice subtle changes in her behavior. Nothing overt, just little things. She had started spending more time on her phone, often texting or scrolling while we were having dinner or when we were supposed to be spending time with the kids. It was a small shift, but it didn't escape me. At first, I told myself it was just the demands of her job. She was constantly busy, always on the go. Being a photographer meant working around deadlines and last-minute shoots. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. For the past few months, I had been planning something special for our 10th wedding anniversary, something that would give us the time we needed to reconnect, to remind ourselves of the love we once had. I booked us a luxurious getaway to Hilton Head Island, a place known for its pristine beaches and tranquil atmosphere. I thought it would be the perfect opportunity for us to escape the stresses of daily life and focus on what really mattered. It wasn't just for Megan. It was for us, for our family. I knew things had been hectic, but I believed this would be the perfect time to reignite that spark. We arrived at the resort, and the first thing I noticed was how beautiful everything was. The ocean breeze, the sound of the waves, the serenity, it felt like a paradise. I hoped that the change of scenery would help Megan unwind and give us the time we needed to focus on each other. But almost immediately, I noticed something else. Megan seemed distant, more distracted than usual. Instead of joining me on walks along the beach or sitting down to meal with the family, she spent hours on her phone. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion from the constant travel for her job, but as the day went on, it became harder to ignore. I try not to let it bother me. Maybe I was just overthinking things. Maybe it was the stress of everything catching up with her, and once she had a chance to relax, she would snap out of it. At least, that's what I told myself. That night, I had planned something special. We were going to have a romantic dinner on the beach, just the two of us. I had prepared a surprise for Megan, a piece of jewelry I had been searching for over the past few months. It was a rare necklace, something I knew she would love. I imagined the look on her face when I gave it to her, the smile that would spread across her face, and the way she would hug me, grateful for my thoughtfulness. But when I handed her the box, the smile I had hoped for never came. She only glanced at the necklace for a moment, then looked up at me with a strange expression on her face. "Daniel," she said, her voice softer than usual, "there's something I want to ask of you." I paused, my heart suddenly racing. What could it be? A part of me hoped it was something small, something that would make the evening even more memorable, but then I saw the seriousness in her eyes. She wasn't joking. This wasn't just a casual request. "You said I could ask for anything," Megan continued, her gaze steady but distant. "I want to spend a night with Ethan." I stared at her, speechless for a moment. Ethan? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan was a friend of mine, a fellow businessman who specialized in interior design. We had worked together on a number of projects over the years, and while I knew he was close with Megan, I never imagined there was anything more between them. But the look in Megan's eyes told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was asking for something much deeper. I don't understand," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. My mind was racing, trying to process what she had just said. Megan took a deep breath and explained, "I've been feeling lost lately, Daniel. I don't feel like we're really connected anymore. I've been spending a lot of time with Ethan, and he's been there for me in ways that you haven't." I felt a tightness in my chest, a sudden wave of nausea. The words she spoke hit me like a physical blow. How'd I miss this? How'd I not seen the signs? You feel closer to him than you do to me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, barely able to comprehend the pain in her words. She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. I never meant for it to happen this way, Daniel, but I can't deny what I'm feeling. I'm so sorry. The air between us felt thick with tension, and I couldn't think straight. All I wanted was to hold her, to fix whatever had gone wrong. But something inside me told me that this wasn't something I could fix. This wasn't just a bump in the road. This was a fracture in the foundation of everything we had built together. I didn't know what to say next. My heart felt like it had been torn in half. I had never imagined this would be the end of us, and yet, here we were. I couldn't sleep that night. Megan had gone to bed, but I lay there in the darkness, my mind racing. I kept replaying her words over and over again. Each time they stung a little more. I've been spending a lot of time with Ethan. I feel closer to him than I do to you. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming. I had always trusted Megan. She was my partner in life, my equal, my best friend. How could she have kept something like this from me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had missed the signs. I had been so wrapped up in my own work, in the hustle of running my business, that I hadn't seen how distant we had become. How had I not noticed the growing gap between us? I got up from the bed, pacing the room. The quiet of the resort was only broken by the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. I stood at the window, staring out into the night, unable to focus on anything other than Megan's words. Ethan, why him? What had he given her that I couldn't? I didn't know how much time had passed, but I finally decided I needed to do something. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. I hadn't looked at it all day, but now I felt an irresistible pull to see what else Megan had been hiding. My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone, something I never thought I would have to do. The first thing I saw was a string of messages between Megan and Ethan. They were casual at first, but as I scrolled further, I noticed the tone of their conversation shift. There were private jokes, shared memories, and then intimate confessions. My heart dropped as I read the words on the screen. I miss you. Can't wait to see you again. I feel so connected to you in a way I haven't felt in a long time. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat growing larger with each message. There were even pictures of Megan and Ethan together, smiling, laughing close. And in one photo, they were holding hands. I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. The reality of what was happening hit me like a freight train. Megan, the woman I had trusted more than anyone, had been hiding this from me for God knows how long. She had built this secret world with Ethan, one that I wasn't a part of. I didn't know how long I sat there, reading through everything, but eventually I couldn't take it anymore. The pain, the humiliation, the sense of betrayal, it was too much. I knew I needed answers. I had to confront Megan. I walked back to our bedroom, my mind numb. I could feel my heart racing, my hands shaking, but I couldn't stop. I had to talk to her to make sense of everything. She needed to explain herself, to tell me why she hadn't been honest with me. I shook her awake gently. Megan, I whispered, my voice tight, wake up. She stirred, blinking at me in confusion, but when she saw the look on my face, her expression changed. There was no hiding the guilt in her eyes. I didn't need to say a word. She already knew what I had found. You went through my phone, she said softly, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me, Megan? I asked, my voice strained with emotion. Why didn't you tell me that you were seeing Ethan like this? That you felt this way about him? She sat up in bed, rubbing her face, and for a moment, I could see the weight of her regret. But then, she spoke, her words barely a whisper. I didn't want to hurt you, Daniel. I didn't want to destroy what we had. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I've been feeling so lost, so alone. And when I started talking to Ethan, it was like everything that was missing in our marriage was there with him. He listened to me. He made me feel seen. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, but I couldn't stop it. My chest tightened as I listened to her explanation, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. She had been hiding this from me, and in doing so, she had torn apart everything we had built. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I hadn't been paying attention. I had been so caught up in my own world that I hadn't seen the cracks forming in our marriage. I don't know what to say. I finally managed. My voice was barely above a whisper, and I felt the tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. I thought I was enough for you. I thought we were enough. We were, she said, her voice breaking. But somewhere along the way, we lost each other. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at her for what she had done, for how she had betrayed me, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just sat there, silent, staring at the woman I thought I knew, but who now seemed like a stranger. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room again. My thoughts were scattered, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and confusion. How had everything gone so wrong? Finally, I spoke, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I can't do this, Megan. I can't keep pretending like everything is fine. You've hurt me in a way I never thought possible. I need you to leave. I need you to go. She stared at me in shock, her face pale, as if the words had hit her like a physical blow. Daniel, no, just go, I said, my voice firm. I need space. I need time to figure this out. I can't be around you right now. Megan didn't argue. She stood up quietly, tears streaming down her face, and gathered a few things before leaving the room without another word. As I stood there, staring out into the night, I realized that everything had changed. My life, my family, everything I had worked for, it was all slipping through my fingers. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. This was the end of the life I had known. The days after Megan left were a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that settled deep in my chest. The resort, once a place of hope and potential, now felt like a prison. The silence in the house was deafening, and every corner seemed to echo with the ghosts of what used to be. I spent most of my time thinking about the life we had built together. How had it all come to this? We had been so happy once. Our marriage had felt unbreakable. We had plans, dreams, and a future that seemed certain. Yet in a single moment, it all unraveled. The hardest part, though, wasn't just dealing with the betrayal. It was the realization that everything I thought I knew about Megan, everything I thought we shared, had been a lie. She had been hiding pieces of herself from me for so long, and I hadn't seen it. I hadn't been there for her when she needed me the most. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, in my own business, that I had missed the signs of her loneliness, her discontent. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, on being present, but now I was left to question everything. Had I been blind to the cracks in our marriage? Had I taken her for granted? The guilt gnawed at me. I hadn't heard from Megan since that night. She had left, and I had insisted on her staying away, at least for the time being. I needed space. I needed to think. But every time I looked at Emily and Joshua, I was reminded of the life we had before everything fell apart. Emily, with her bright smile and laughter that could fill a room, and Joshua, with his boundless energy and innocent joy. They were still too young to understand what was happening, but they could feel the change. I did my best to keep things normal for them. I tried to maintain the routine they were used to, getting them ready for school, making breakfast, helping them with their homework. But no matter how much I tried to pretend that everything was okay, it wasn't. I was falling apart inside, and it was all I could do to hold it together for their sake. But even as I focused on the kids, I couldn't stop thinking about Megan. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it would be a message from her, some sign that she regretted what had happened, some way to fix things. But the phone stayed silent. A few days after she left, I decided to confront the reality of what had happened. I needed closure, some kind of understanding of why this had happened and where it had all gone wrong. It was then that I made the decision to file for divorce. The process was painful. It felt like I was pulling at the last threads of a life I thought I knew. Megan tried to reach out to me a few times, sending messages full of apologies, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was there to say? There was too much hurt, too much betrayal. She had crossed the line, and no amount of regret or sorrow could undo what had been done. I had no intention of making this easy for her. We had built this life together, but now I was going to have to dismantle it. I filed for full custody of Emily and Joshua. They needed stability, and they needed me. I couldn't let Megan's mistakes affect them any more than they already had. The day I sent in the divorce papers, I sat down in my office, staring at the envelope in my hand. It was a bitter thing to sign, a final acknowledgement that everything was truly over. I had spent so many years building my business, my family, my life, but now it was all slipping away, piece by piece. And then there was Ethan, my so-called friend. I couldn't bring myself to confront him just yet. Part of me was still trying to make sense of how he had played a part in all of this. How could he have done this to me, to our friendship? He knew the kind of person I was, loyal, trusting, always there when people needed me. And yet he had betrayed me in the worst way. I thought about calling him, confronting him, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. Nothing would bring Megan back. Nothing would fix the damage he had caused. So I left it alone. But I couldn't help but wonder what would happen to his business. I knew how important his reputation was to him, how much he valued his career. Losing clients over this affair would be a heavy blow to him, but part of me felt that he deserved it. It was strange how quickly everything had changed. Just a few weeks ago, I had been living what seemed like the perfect life, successful career, beautiful wife, healthy children. Now, I was staring at the wreckage of it all, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. But even as I struggled with the pain, I knew one thing for certain. I had to keep going. I had to move forward. For Emily and Joshua. For myself. The hardest part was the uncertainty. I didn't know what the future held, didn't know if I would ever be able to trust again, or if I would ever be able to love again. But I knew that I couldn't stay stuck in this place forever. So I focused on what I could control. My children, my work. And slowly but surely I started to rebuild. Not just my career, but my life. It's strange how life can feel like it's coming apart at the seams one moment, and then suddenly you realize that you're standing on the other side, looking at a new beginning. The pain, the heartbreak, they never really go away, but over time, you learn how to live with them. You learn how to move forward. For the first few weeks, after the divorce papers were filed, I was in a fog. It was like I was going through the motions, dealing with the legal proceedings, but I wasn't truly present. I couldn't focus on anything, let alone my business. But that all changed when I saw Emily and Joshua, their innocent faces, full of hope and trust, despite everything that had happened. They were still my reason for getting out of bed in the morning. Emily, especially, seemed to be taking things the hardest. She was old enough to understand that something was wrong, that the warm, happy family she once knew was no longer the same. She'd ask questions I didn't have answers to. Why isn't Mom here anymore, Daddy? When will we all be together again? Those were the hardest moments. Explaining things to her, trying to make sense of what was happening, was gut-wrenching. Joshua, being only 5, didn't fully understand, but he could sense the change. He was quieter than usual, asking for more cuddles and attention. I tried to be there for him, to fill the gap left by Megan's absence, but I couldn't do it all. No matter how hard I tried, there was no replacing what was missing from our family. But through it all, I tried to stay strong for them. I wasn't going to let this wreck my kids' lives. I wasn't going to let the mistakes of their mother and my own broken heart destroy their future. Work became my escape. My company, which had once been my pride and joy, had started to slip a bit with all the emotional turmoil. But slowly, I regained my focus. I threw myself back into my business, working longer hours, making sure every project was on track. It wasn't easy, but the distractions helped. I needed to stay busy. I couldn't afford to wallow in self-pity. As the weeks turned into months, I started to rebuild not just my business, but my sense of self. I had always defined myself through my success, through the family I had built with Megan. But now, I had to redefine what success meant. It wasn't about having the perfect family anymore. It wasn't about having everything in place. It was about moving forward, being there for my children, and figuring out what was next for me. There were still moments of weakness, nights when I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I had gone wrong. I'd think about Megan, what could have been, what we had lost, and the pain would hit all over again. But then I would look over at Emily and Joshua, asleep in their rooms, and I would remind myself that I couldn't afford to dwell on the past. I had a future to build, a life to create, and they needed me. And then, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Sarah. She was a business associate, a client I had worked with on a couple of projects. She was smart, kind, and understanding. At first, I had never thought of her in a romantic way. She was just another professional contact, someone I respected in the industry. But as we worked together more closely, I began to see her in a new light. She had a way of listening, of making me feel like I mattered. She had been through her own share of pain and heartache, and she understood the scars that linger long after the pain subsides. One evening, after a long day of meetings, we sat down for a casual dinner. We talked about everything: our work, our lives, our pasts.